Alright, g'day everyone, welcome to another video by the Frontline Trooper. My name's Andrew Cook and welcome to the Halo Magnum Part 3. Now we're going to jump straight into it. As you would have left off in the last tutorial, we had our solid block of foam. Now it was just set in a just the normal flat cutout, so now we really have to start applying the detail to it. To start off, we're going to trace the lines. So as we are now looking at the picture that we have, we're going to find all the details that are needed to be transferred across to the block of styrofoam in order for us to create the guidelines and cut it out. So that's what it looks like before. So now we're going to go, using the pictures, create some guidelines or reference points so we know where to cut to create and level this gun. So to start off, once you've done all this, it may take a while, just please make sure you're using a light color such as orange, yellow, or something that matches your styrofoam color. And once you've got it on, you just want to carefully use a ruler to get out the straight lines and kind of cut maybe 0.25 of a millimeter in. We're not trying to make some really solid lines, we're just giving it a nice lip on the edge so that we can see the detail, and when shadows pass over it you can definitely see that there's a structure and a solidity to the gun, so to speak. So once you've done one cut, you want to just keep on leveling the rest of the gun down to make sure it's at the right level, so to speak. So as you can see, we've made that kind of lip. In light it stands out quite strong, and when you can see it on the side it matches. So yet again, just please make sure it's all flat, because you don't want to be leveling one half of the gun to find later on that you haven't leveled up the same side, because then you start making problems and it doesn't look too good. So that's the first stage there, which is the part where the gun slides over. So the top part is where we have shell extraction point and the actual big heavy cartridge stuff. So we've done this. Now of course you need to go back to your picture and see where the next part has to be, and that is actually the handle. Now the handle isn't this thick as the 40mm foam that we're using, so we need to thin that down a bit. So we're going to cut that down to maybe about 3.6mm in length, which is about 2mm off on, about 2mm off on each side. So cut that down, so we now have 3 layers, the top, the middle, and the bottom being the handle. That's the easiest to get through, and what are we going to do next? We have to just carve out little details in between the slider and the top covering part, which you can see on the pictures, and keep on referring back to your reference photos or even the one that you're looking at now on the side. You need to always be referring back, because if you make a mistake, you can't go back and correct it. So now we're going to do the handle. Now the handle consists of 2 easy little kind of polygon shapes which we have to carve into the handle, which is pretty simple. So we're just going to grab a ruler and our pen and just kind of mark them out carefully and cut them out. And like I said, we're not going too deep in, we're just going to cut 2mm and carefully slice out the foam so we can de-level it and get that nice handle grip that we need. Now at the moment, sure, it looks a bit scrappy and stuff, but don't worry about that, we'll start sanding it down later on. So if you're a bit worried about what it's looking at the moment, just keep it as flat as you can, but we'll correct it all later. So now we're just going to quickly cut off some edges. We need to turn this gun more into a realistic one to hold. You can't really hold the gun with straight rigid edges because it kind of just hurts your hand a bit and it feels really uncomfortable. So we're just going to cut every little sharp edge off just so it's more easy to handle, and it just looks a bit nice when we sand it down, because it'll be a nice smooth solid edge rather than a rigid sharp thing. Now the rest of it we have to keep on referring back to our pictures. As you can see, the front has got a kind of curve which leads down to where the front hand grip goes, so we're just going to carefully slice off an edge there and give it that kind of 20-degree angle, as well as up the back here where I think it's the blowback feature part is. There's a slight indent to that, so just cut that off like so. So I hope you're following it so far. It's really not that hard. As you can see, it's just simple basic tips. I've left this in quite a slow motion, well not slow motion, but just above normal pace so that you guys can follow it. This video is made to be quite long, but in the end you guys will come out with quite a nice product. Now I've missed out a few parts that you want to just smooth off. Remember, you've got to constantly be looking at your reference picture to make sure, does your gun look like this and does it not? As you can see, I missed the top part where the bullet shells extract from, so go back, cut the edges off, and remember, we'll sand it soon. So the sandpaper we're going to be using is about 240. Now, I don't understand what the P means, but it's about roughness or something. You don't want to be using sandpaper that you find for walls or something. You want something that is nice and smooth. You should be able to run your hand over it without feeling all this grainy stuff or cutting your hand. It should be nice and smooth so that it doesn't rip up the styrofoam surface. It will just heat it up and kind of smooth it out. Now, why do I use sandpaper? Because really it does make an amazing effect to your gun. It heats it up, it kind of changes the texture and the surface a bit, makes it a bit more malleable so you can paint it a bit better, and it just looks a whole lot cooler, to be honest. You don't want something looking all rigidy and unsmooth, and you can see it looks far nicer than what it did before. And when you paint it, it will look amazing with a nice flat surface, and you want to get these as realistic as possible, and you will learn only through experience. So as you can see, it's far nicer, and we will in the end do a far nicer final job with it. You have to go get the sandpaper right at the end before we paint, but that's only after you've fully assembled all the extra parts. Speaking about extra parts, let's get started on it. Alright, we have to now build the top, I don't even know what the names for these things are, but the top big chunky part, I'll just call it that. Now, because our block of styrofoam is only 40 millimeters, we actually have to add something onto it. So to do that, we're just going to get an extra bit of styrofoam and kind of rule out the same top part onto the new one so that we can cut it out and place it over. So you can do this any way you want, like I'm doing here. I'm just grabbing the measurements and quickly chucking it on, and then I'll cut that out. Or you can get a piece of paper or the same paper you were using at the beginning and just put it on another piece of styrofoam and cut it out. But pretty much what we want to do is just quickly cut out the piece, which we're not going to use the whole part because you don't want to be gluing the whole 40mm block onto another 40mm block, because that would look stupid, because you don't want to have a Magnum that's 8 centimeters wide like that. So we're going to quickly mark out maybe about 10 millimeters into it, maybe not even that, maybe even 0.5 millimeters into the actual block, and we're going to cut it out so that we have a nice thin piece that we can overlay. So as you can see here, just quickly doing a nice little rule out so that we can go straight down and cut it. Now this is quite a hard part. Always be looking to where your blade is coming out, because you don't want to be cutting on an angle so that the block goes on a weird position. And always use the flat side to place up against the other flat side, because we can always sand it down later. You don't want to have any lumps or any protruding styrofoam parts when you're assembling this part, because this is the most seen part on the gun, so you want to make this as perfect as you can get. So just doing the other side. Like I said, cut it down, make sure where your blade is going, and place flat on flat. And you get that nice seamless look. Now, to glue it down, you can use many different products, whatever works for you. I preferably like using a hot glue gun. I didn't think hot glue guns could work, but it actually works amazingly. I used to use PVA glue. It took way too long. I had to wait to about 3 hours for it to actually dry. And that is a nuisance when you're wanting to get a prop over with fast, and it really made these tutorials much harder to do because I had to wait. So hot glue gun, guys, does work. Yeah, it's worth investing in. They're not too expensive, but you do go through it quite fast when you're working with the styrofoam. Now the other back part we have to do is, like again, where you cock it from. It's a little air vent exhaust kind of thing that just keeps the gas out of the chamber. So we're just going to quickly, like we did with the big, I still don't know what you call it, big chunky up part on the front of the gun, cut out a nice small one, which will then hot glue gun down. But remember, we're looking back at our reference point, and you can see that actually the edges are quite curved and have an angle to them, so we'll just go and quickly make those incisions, and we'll just glue it down. So I hope you've been able to follow so far. It's not really that hard, it's just practice and practice and practice. You'll probably still be following this tutorial maybe when you're doing your 6th or 5th gun. Believe me, the one you're doing now, it'll be so much better a 3rd time around. So honestly, I recommend doing one, then doing another, and then doing another. Maybe by your 3rd try, you'll have one so cool, you'll be so proud of it. So, as you can see, in less than 20 minutes, I turned one flat side into a nice leveled out Magnum. And you can already see it's starting to take its shape, and with a further bit more details and refinements, we'll get the full out Magnum. Now we'll be doing that in part 4, So as you can see, we'll be adding on the handrail, the Magnum, the magazine, the trigger, all the laser lights, and safeties, and all those kind of things that really make the gun stand out. So my name's Andrew Cook, this is the Frontline Trooper. I'll see you in Halo Making of a Magnum Part 4.